The last transmission, the twin sons of Corvessa music, painted the sky in shades of amber and rose as they began their descent toward the horizon. It was the time of day the Zenth people called the golden hour, when families gathered in their gardens and children played in the streets, while the air filled with the scent of blooming night flowers. For 3,000 years this peaceful rhythm had defined life on Corvessa. The Zenth had never known war, never built weapons of destruction, never imagined that their beautiful world could become a target. That peace shattered in an instant. The first explosion tore through the northern continent without warning. A massive beam of crimson energy descended from the sky like the finger of an angry god, vaporizing everything it touched. Mountains crumbled into dust, rivers boiled away, cities that had stood for centuries became craters in seconds. The Zenth people looked up in horror as their sky filled with shadows. Hundreds of angular black ships emerged from the darkness of space, their hulls covered in jagged armor that seemed to absorb light itself. These were vessels built for one purpose: destruction. In the central chamber of Corvus's high council, alarms screamed their warnings. Too late. Council leader Thern stood frozen before the massive display screen, showing the devastation unfolding across his world. His silver-scaled hands trembled as he watched entire cities disappear in flashes of red fire around him. The 12 council members struggled to comprehend what was happening. The Zen 3 had sensors, early warning systems, defense protocols, but none of it had mattered. The enemy had struck too fast, too hard, too completely. Who are they? Whispered council member Lyra, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Why would anyone attack us? We have no military, no weapons, nothing worth taking by force. Thern's throat tightened. He knew exactly who they were. Every civilized species in the galaxy knew the name and feared it. The Skull Dominion, an empire built on conquest and subjugation, spreading across the stars like a plague. They did not need reasons to attack. They did not negotiate or show mercy. They simply took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. Send the distress signal, Thern commanded, his voice steadier than he felt. Broad on all frequencies. Contact every known civilization. Tell them we are under attack and need immediate assistance. The communications officer, a young Zenter named Kess, worked frantically at his console. His fingers moved across the holographic controls with desperate speed. Within moments, the transmission began. A powerful wave of energy carrying Corvus's plea for help rippled outward into the vastness of space, reaching toward every corner of the known galaxy. This is Corvessa of the Zenri people. We are under attack by the Skull Dominion. Our defenses have failed. Our cities are burning. We request immediate military assistance from any civilization capable of responding. Millions of lives hang in the balance. Please, if anyone receives this message, we beg you to help us. The message repeated automatically, cycling through every language and communication protocol in the galactic database. Thern watched the transmission indicator pulse with each broadcast, sending their desperate cry further and further into the void. Surely someone would answer. The galaxy was vast and filled with powerful empires. The Archelian Federation had fleets numbering in the thousands. The Vorten Unity commanded weapons that could crack planets. The Crystalline Collective possessed technology far beyond anything the Zen 3 could imagine. One of them would respond. They had 2 hours. Past the bombardment continued. Skell ships methodically worked their way across Corva's surface, reducing everything to rubble. The Zen 3 had activated what few protective shields they possessed, but they were designed for natural disasters, not military assault. They crumbled like paper under the relentless barrage. Refugee ships tried to flee into space, but Skell fighters hunted them down mercilessly. Not a single vessel escaped. In the council chamber, responses finally began arriving. Theron felt a surge of hope as the first transmission came through. It was from the Archelian Federation, one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. But as he listened to the message, hope turned to ash in his mouth. Corvessa, we acknowledge your distress call. However, the Archelian Federation cannot commit military forces against the Skrull Dominion at this time. Such action would destabilize our borders and invite retaliation. We offer our sympathy and suggest immediate evacuation. May fortune find you. The transmission ended. Theron stared at the blank screen in disbelief. They refused. The mighty Archelians, with their thousands of ships and millions of soldiers, refused to help. Before he could process this betrayal, another message arrived, then another and another. The Vorten Unity cited political complications. The Crystalline Collective mentioned trade agreements that prevented intervention. The Hellion Empire simply stated they had no interest in getting involved. One by one, every major power in the galaxy sent the same message: you are on your own. Lyra collapsed into her seat, tears streaming down her face. They are abandoning us. All of them. They will let us die. Theron had no response. What could he say? The truth was undeniable. The galaxy's great civilizations, the ones who spoke endlessly about peace and cooperation and unity, were cowards. When it mattered most, when innocent lives hung in the balance, they chose safety over righteousness. They chose politics over morality. Send a message. Again, Theron said quietly, keep broadcasting. Someone must hear us. Someone must care. Kess obeyed, though his expression showed he had lost all hope. The distress signal continued its endless cycle, screaming into the darkness for help that would never come. Outside the council chamber, Corvessa died slowly. The SCR had moved beyond simple bombardment. Their ground forces landed in massive dropships, deploying soldiers that resembled walking nightmares, tall insectoid creatures with razor-sharp claws and armor grafted directly into their chidness bodies. They swept through what remained of Century cities, killing everything that moved. Night fell across the capital city of the Ranis. The golden hour came and went unmarked, the sky hidden behind clouds of smoke and ash. Theron stood alone on the council chamber's observation deck, looking out at his dying world. Fires burned on every horizon. The screams of his people echoed faintly even through the thick walls. This was the end. The Zeni would become another forgotten species. Another cautionary tale whispered him the stars. Then something impossible happened. The communication console erupted with activity. Kess shouted in surprise as data flooded across his screens. Council leader, we have a response. Darren spun around. Oh, which empire? Kess frantically analyzed the incoming signal. His expression shifted From confusion to complete bewilderment. I do not recognize the signature. The language is in the database but marked as inactive. The origin point is from Sector 447, the region designated as restricted space. What civilization? Therein demanded, it says. They are human, a cold silence filled the chamber. Human, the word carried weight, though the struggle to remember why humans had been part of the Galactic Council once, decades ago. Small species from an unremarkable planet. They had attended a few sessions, traded peacefully, then simply vanished. No explanation, no warning. They withdrew all their ambassadors, sealed their borders, and went silent. Most people assumed they had gone extinct or destroyed themselves in some internal conflict. No one had thought about them in years. Play the message, Thuron ordered. The speakers crackled to life. A voice emerged, speaking in clear galactic standard with an accent Thern had never heard before. It was deep, calm, and carried an edge of barely controlled fury. Corvessa, this is Fleet Commander Sarah Chin of the United Human Defense Force. We received your distress call. We are en route to your location at maximum velocity. Estimated arrival in 42 minutes. Hold on, we are coming. The transmission ended as abruptly as it began. They stared at the speaker in stunned silence. Humans coming to help. It made no sense. They had nothing to gain, no strategic interest in Corvessa, no reason to risk conflict with the SCR. Yet they were coming anyway. How many ships? Lyra asked, her voice fragile. With desperate hope, Kess worked his console, trying to detect the approaching fleet. His eyes widened. I am reading multiple FTL signatures. The energy output is massive. They are not masking their approach at all. It is as if they want the scroll to know they are coming. How many? Thern repeated. At least 200 vessels. Council leader, possibly more. They are moving in tight formation at speeds I have never seen before. 200 ships. It was not a rescue fleet. It was an invasion force. The Zen 3 Council members looked at each other in shock and confusion. Who were these humans? What had they become during their years of silence? The SCR noticed the approaching fleet as well. Their bombardment paused. The massive warships in orbit began repositioning, turning their weapons toward the edge of the system where the human fleet would emerge. The enemy clearly did not take the threat seriously. Why would they? Humans were nobodies, a forgotten species with no reputation, no feared weapons, no legendary warriors. The SCR outnumbered them and had been conquering worlds for centuries. 42 minutes felt like an eternity. Thern watched the timer countdown while explosions continued to light up the night. Every second more of his people died. Every moment Corvessa slipped closer to complete annihilation. But now, impossibly, they had a chance. Someone had answered. Someone cared enough to fight. The timer reached zero. Space at the edge of the Corvessa system suddenly tore open. Brilliant blue rifts appeared in the darkness like wounds in reality itself. The human fleet emerged from faster than light travel in perfect synchronization, their ships blazing with power. They were not like anything in the galactic database. Sleek, angular vessels covered in dark gray armor that seemed to drink in the starlight. Their engines burned with intense white fire. Every ship bristled with weapon imp placements that glowed with barely contained energy. At the center of the formation flew the largest vessel Thern had ever seen. It dwarfed even SCR battleships, a massive carrier that looked like it could hold 1,000 fighters in its belly, across its hull, painted in white letters that reflected the light of Corvus's suns, was a single word: retribution, fleet. Commander Sarah Chen's voice came through every speaker in the council chamber, broadcast on all frequencies so the entire planet could hear. Skreel. Dominion forces, this is the United Human Defense Force. You are hereby ordered to cease all hostile actions against Corvus immediately and withdraw from this system. Failure to comply will result in your complete destruction. You have 30 seconds to respond. The Skrell response came in the form of weapons fire. Hundreds of red energy beams lanced across space toward the human fleet. The Zen 3, watching from below, gasped, certain they were about to witness humanity's annihilation, but the humans did not even try to dodge. They simply raised their shields. The SCR weapons struck an invisible barrier and dissipated harmlessly like raindrops against stone. Sarah Chen's voice returned, colder now, harder. Time's up. The human fleet opened fire and Corvus's sky turned white with fury. The price of silence, the space above Corvus transformed into a storm of light and fire. Human warships unleashed weapons that defied everything the Zenri thought they knew about warfare. Brilliant blue beams cut through the darkness with surgical precision, each shot finding its target with impossible accuracy. The Skrell ship, so terrifying just moments before, began exploding one after another in cascading bursts of orange flame, their thick armor designed to withstand conventional weapons melted like wax under the intensity of human firepower. Council leader Thern watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded on the massive display screen. The Skrell had dozens of battleships in orbit, each one capable of destroying a city with a single volley, yet the humans tore through them as if they were made of paper. A Skrell dreadnought 3 km long and bristling with cannons turned its full arsenal toward the human carrier. Retribution, the bombardment should have overwhelmed any shield, cracked any hull. Instead, the human ship absorbed every hit without even slowing down. Then it returned fire with a single weapon mounted beneath its bow, the weapon charged with a deep hum that could somehow feel even through the transmission. A sphere of condensed energy formed, growing brighter and brighter until it burned like a newborn star. When it released, the beam was so powerful it distorted space itself. The Skrull dreadnought simply ceased to exist. One moment it filled the screen, massive and terrifying. The next moment there was nothing but expanding debris and fading energy signatures. By the ancestors, whispered Lyra, her voice shaking. What kind of weapons are those? Kes frantically analyzed the data his sensors collected. The energy output is beyond our measurement capabilities. These are not standard plasma cannons or kinetic weapons. This is something else. Entirely something new, but it was not just the weapons that shocked the Zen-3, it was how the humans fought. Their ships moved with a coordination that seemed almost impossible, as if controlled by a single mind. When Skull fighters swarmed toward them in clouds of hundreds, human point defense systems activated simultaneously across the entire fleet. Thousands of small turrets tracked and eliminated targets with inhuman speed and accuracy. Not a single enemy fighter reached its target. The Skrell tried ramming attacks Desperation moves by pilots who knew they were already dead. Human ships dodged with fluid grace, spinning and weaving through space like dancers. Rather than warships, the battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, the entire SKRL orbital fleet was destroyed, not damaged, not rooted completely. Annihilated, burning debris rained down through Corvus's atmosphere, streaking across the sky like falling stars. The Zenth people emerged from their shelters and bunkers, looking up in disbelief at the carnage above. Their world still burned, their city still lay in ruins. But the bombardment had stopped. The enemy was broken. Fleet Commander Sarah Chen's face appeared on every screen. Across Corvessa, she was younger than Thern expected, perhaps 40 standard years, with dark hair pulled back tightly and eyes that carried the weight of old pain. Her uniform was crisp and military, dark blue with silver insignia, but what struck the most was her expression. No triumph, no satisfaction, just grim determination, and something that looked like sorrow. People of Corvessa, she began, her voice steady and clear, the immediate orbital threat has been neutralized. However, SKRL ground forces remain on your planet. We are deploying landing teams to eliminate them. Please remain in sheltered locations until we signal all clear. We will not let any more of you die. The transmission switched to show the human carrier's launch bays opening. Hundreds of smaller craft poured out like a metal river. Dropships painted the same dark gray as the warships. They descended through the atmosphere in precise formation, heading toward every location where SCR forces had landed. The watched as the first wave reached the capital city of the Uranus. The Skrell ground troops, those nightmarish insectoid soldiers who had slaughtered Zenth civilians by the thousands, turned their weapons skyward. The human dropships did not slow down. They crashed through SCR defensive fire as if it did not exist, their shields absorbing punishment that should have torn them apart. When they landed, the rear doors exploded open and human soldiers emerged. They wore powered armor that made them look twice their natural size, bulky suits of gray and black metal that moved with mechanical precision. Each soldier carried weapons that hummed with barely restrained power. The Skrell charged forward with their characteristic fury. Those razor-sharp claws extended, their chittering war cries echoing through the ruins. The humans did not retreat. They did not hesitate. They simply raised their weapons and fired. The SKRL soldier, who had seemed invincible just hours before, fell in waves. Human weapons did not just kill them, they obliterated them. Energy bolts that could punch through skull armor like it was air. Explosive rounds that detonated with enough force to shatter kitten and bone. Plasma streams that burned at temperatures hot enough to vaporize flesh instantly. But what truly amazed Thern was the discipline. Human soldiers moved like a single organism, covering each other's positions, advancing in coordinated waves, eliminating threats with cold efficiency. They fought without anger, without mercy, without hesitation. This was not revenge or bloodlust. This was professional warfare executed at the highest possible level. Within 2 hours, every stranger on Corvessa was dead. The human forces secured the major population centers, established medical stations, and began evacuating wounded Zenthuri to their ships. They brought supplies, medical equipment, food, and Water they worked tirelessly asking for. Nothing in return. They stood in the ruins of the council chamber, its beautiful dome cracked in one wall, collapsed, and watched human soldiers carry injured Zen 3 children to safety. One soldier, a woman whose armor bore scorch marks from recent combat, stopped to comfort a crying child who had lost her family. The soldier removed her helmet, revealing a scarred face and gentle eyes, and spoke softly until the child's sobs quieted. A presence appeared beside them. He turned to find Fleet Commander Sarah Chin standing there in person, having landed her personal shuttle without fanfare or announcement. Up close she seemed smaller than her voice suggested, barely taller than Theon himself, but there was steel in her eyes, a hardness born from terrible experience. Council leader. There, she said, offering a formal salute. I am sorry we could not arrive sooner. I am sorry for your losses. The felt emotions he could not name churning in his chest, relief, gratitude, confusion, and beneath it all, a burning question. Why? He asked simply. Why did you come? The entire galaxy refused us. Every empire we contacted abandoned us to die, but you humans, a species we barely remember, you risked everything to save us. Why? Sarah's expression darkened. She looked away toward the burning horizon, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of history. Because we know exactly what you felt when those responses came back. We know what it is like to beg for help and be met with silence. She gestured toward a partially intact building, and they walked together through the rubble. Zenth survivors watched them pass, some reaching out to touch Sarah's uniform as if she were a spirit made flesh. She acknowledged each one with a nod, but kept moving until they reached a relatively quiet corner. 23 years ago, Sarah began, the Skrin attacked human space. We had 6 colony worlds beyond our home system, beautiful places where families were building new lives. Skrill came without warning, without provocation. They did exactly what they did here. Bombardment from orbit, ground forces slaughtering civilians, complete annihilation. The felt ice form in his stomach. The galaxy did nothing. Sarah's laugh was bitter and sharp. Oh, we sent distress calls just like you did. We begged every empire, every federation, every collective. We explained that we were peaceful, that we had no military to speak of, that millions were dying. Do you know what they said? She pulled out a small data device and activated it. Holographic messages appeared in the air, dozens of them, each from a different civilization. The recognized the emblems, the Archelian Federation, the Vorten Unity, the Crystalline Collective, the Hellion Empire, all the same powers who had refused Corvessa. The Archelians said it would destabilize their borders. Sarah recited, her voice flat. The Vorten cited political complications. The Crystallines mentioned trade agreements. The Hellions said they had no interest. Word for word, they sent you the same messages they sent us. 6 colonies, she continued, her hands clenching into fists. 6 worlds, 4 billion people gone. We evacuated who we could, but most died in the bombardment or were hunted down by SCR ground forces. My daughter was on one of those worlds. She was 8 years old. The closed his eyes, unable to bear the pain in Sarah's voice. When it was over, when the scroll finally left to conquer something else, humanity made a decision. We withdrew from the Galactic Council. We sealed our borders, and we Spent the next 2 decades building something new, not a peaceful trading federation, not a diplomatic corps, a military force capable of standing against anyone who would prey on the helpless. She gestured toward the sky, where human warships maintained their orbital positions. Every ship you see was designed specifically to fight the SCR. Every weapon was tested against simulations of their tactics. Every soldier trained for years to face them. We studied their movements, their strategies, their weaknesses. We prepared for the day when we would meet them again. But why save us? Thern asked. You could have used this power for revenge, for conquest, for anything. Why risk your lives for strangers? Sarah met his eyes, and for the first time, Thern saw something other than pain in her expression. He saw purpose, because when we were dying, no one came. We learned what it means to be abandoned by the galaxy. We learned that the great civilizations, with their grand speeches about peace and unity, are cowards who hide behind politics while innocents burn. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. We made an oath, council leader. Every human who wears this uniform swears it. We will never let another species suffer what we suffered. When someone sends a distress call, when someone begs for help against those who would destroy them, humanity will answer always, not because we expect reward or gratitude, but because it is right. Because someone has to stand against the darkness. The felt tears streaming down his face. All his life he had believed in the goodness of the galaxy, in the noble ideals of cooperation and mutual aid. The scree attack had shattered that belief, but now, standing before the scarred human commander who had lost everything and chose to become a shield for others, he found something new, not naive faith, but genuine hope. What happens now? He asked. Sarah pulled up a tactical display. The SKRL will send reinforcements. They always do, but we will be ready. The human fleet will remain in this system until you are safe. We will help rebuild your defenses, train your people in proper security protocols, and establish a communication relay so you can reach us instantly if threatened again. We have nothing to offer in return, Thern said quietly. Our world is destroyed, our resources depleted. We cannot repay this debt. We do not want payment, Sarah replied firmly. We want the galaxy to change. For too long the strong have ignored the weak. The powerful have hidden behind excuses while the vulnerable suffered. That ends now. Humanity will not let it continue. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, council leader. We are monitoring distress calls across the entire galaxy. When we detect them, we investigate. If they are legitimate, we respond. In the past 5 years, we have saved 14 species from extinction, 14 worlds that would have fallen if they depended on the major empires. Thern's eyes widened. 14, but how? Your fleet cannot be everywhere at once. Sarah smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had been underestimated for far too long. We have more than one fleet, council leader, much more. While the galaxy forgot about humanity, we built an armada. We have shipyards and hidden systems producing vessels around the clock. We have soldiers training in facilities that rival anything the major powers possess. We prepared for war while they grew comfortable in peace. She activated her comm unit. All human forces begin phase 2 operations. Secure all population. Centers establish supply lines and prepare defensive positions. We are staying until this world is safe. As Sarah walked away to coordinate her forces, Thuron stood alone in the ruins and thought about the strange turn fate had taken. The galaxy's great civilizations, so proud of their power and wisdom, had revealed themselves as hollow. They spoke beautiful words, but lacked the courage to back them with action. Meanwhile, humanity, small and forgotten, had transformed themselves into something the galaxy desperately needed but did not deserve: guardians, protectors, warriors who fought not for glory or conquest, but because they remembered what it felt like to scream into the void and hear nothing but silence in return. Therne looked up at the stars beginning to appear in Corvus's darkening sky. Somewhere out there, other species were suffering. Other worlds were sending desperate calls for help that would be ignored by cowardly empires. But now, finally, someone was listening. Someone would come. The price of the galaxy silence had been paid in human blood and suffering. Now humanity was collecting that debt, one rescue at a time, one saved world at a time. They did not ask for gratitude. They did not demand submission. They simply did what the great powers refused to do. They answered the call, and the galaxy would never be the same.